Okay, welcome, Cam. So we're talking about all things newsletters today, and I wanted to kick this off by just telling folks a little bit more about what you do and how do you fit into the world of newsletters or maybe writing more generally.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. So happy to be chatting about this with you. So yeah, I call myself a professional storyteller. I help people tell their stories for a living. And what does that mean? It means communicating better. It means being able to take all that stuff that lives in your brain, the stuff that you know, the stuff that you think about, the stuff that you care about, and being able to effectively get that out of your brain and into words and into communications, written or otherwise, that other people are going to understand and get. I often talk about this through the lens of thought leadership, of being able to be a leader in your space where you lead with your thoughts and your ideas and your opinions and beliefs about how things could be done or done better or differently. And in so doing, become known for who you really are, your expertise, and the impact that you want to have on the world.
Yeah, so when I talk to coaches, many of them want to have some sort of regular communication with their people, so to speak, and communication that happens perhaps outside of the social media platforms. It just feels like social media platforms tend to really be more short form communication. And I'm hearing coaches wanting to go deeper and share their thoughts, and at the same time, they seem to be experiencing this pull of not wanting to add to the noise of
Mhm.
seemingly all this information that's already out there. Like, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it's not just coaches. I mean, this interest and kind of push-pull of, on the one hand, wanting to do more and wanting to express yourself more and share something that's meaningful with people so that you feel like you're communicating around the things that you care about, and you're also uplifting your business and, developing your own marketing and bringing in clients or, potential clients, that kind of thing. And yet some tension around, but how do I do this? How do I do it in an effective way? How do I do it in a way that doesn't feel gross to me, like I'm just putting more, crap out into the world? That tension is really common amongst like everybody. Like no matter, clients that I have who, a lot of whom have done really remarkable things or have a strong public profile, like they still will grapple with this. And I actually think consideration around it is a mark of someone who likely would actually be a good candidate for telling more of their stories and sharing more of their thoughts, doing more writing and potentially newsletters in particular, because it means you're going to be thoughtful about it. Like certainly there are people out there who are more than happy to just like share their whatever comes into their head, to anybody who will listen. And so I appreciate the thoughtfulness around it. What I don't want to happen though is for the people in the world who really have a lot of good stuff to share, who have, you know, meaningful ideas and knowledge and expertise and a unique point of view that can help other people in the world, to then hold themselves back because they think, oh, there's too much out there already, because there's already so many other people, writing and creating this kind of like internet landfill of content.
Well, I'm thinking of, any book or movie or piece of outwardly expressed creativity that has been created in the last year or two or five or 100, and it wouldn't have been born if that person looked around and said to themselves, "My goodness, there are already so many books out there. Like, I don't want to, I don't want to add to the noise." So I think I appreciate the point of like, well, yes, there's a lot out there, and
And also, I just kind of wanted to temper that though, because yes, you're right, and that's a lovely notion. But I think then a lot of folks go, right, but I'm not going to be the person to write the next, like life-changing novel, you know? And but if you think about it at a smaller scale, like have you ever had someone in your life share a comment with you, say something to you? Maybe it was a teacher who wrote an encouraging note on your paper or said something to you after class, or a coach that you've had who shared a little piece of knowledge with you, or some thoughts with you, a good friend. Like, this is essentially what we're talking about. They can be small. They don't have to be these kind of grandiose publications that are going to change millions of lives. But what I'm talking about is, like, if you do hold that in, not only are you holding yourself back potentially in your capability to grow and be known for what you want to be known for and get more clients and succeed as a business person, but you're potentially preventing even just those few other people who may need to have heard from you that day, or who would benefit in some way from hearing what you're saying, whether it's because it's uplifting, or it's inspiring, or it's just honest or human, or it's just genuinely practically helpful.
Yeah, it's almost like, remember that time somebody said something and it really stayed with you? Well, that could be you today for the couple of people you're writing to. And it doesn't matter
100%.
if it's two people or 200. You could actually be that person saying that thing.
Yep.
So then with that, like, we want to express ourselves, but then the one sentiment I often hear, and to be honest, the sentiment I often experience is this like notion of like, oh my goodness, like this, like nobody cares about this. Like, what interesting things do I have to say? Like, where I'm not the groundbreaking person in the world,
Mhm.
breaking world records or curing cancer. Like, I'm just over here
Right.
having two young kids and trying to
Right.
make dinner on time. So my life seems so ordinary and boring. What could I possibly say that people would want to read?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's really a number of things that we can kind of unpack and get into with this. And the the first comment that I'm going to make, and I don't want to just sort of pass over these concerns, like, we can break them apart, and like I'm happy to go a little bit deeper here. But at surface, I will just say that actually, as a storyteller, I can tell you that certainly, yes, there are people in the world whose stories are absolutely jaw dropping and incredible. But most of the time, the things that we can relate to the most and that can have a big impact on us are often those little stories. They can come out of daily life, the little things that you experience in your life or think about or work on. Those can often be actually more effective, because if I'm getting a story from somebody who said, good news, I just cured cancer again, you know, just another day in the life for me. I'm like, wow, that's really cool, and I mean, it could for sure make a great story. But there's something to be said as well from the person writing to me and saying, like you, of going like, you know what, it was really hard to cook dinner. It's Friday night, it's the end of the week, I'm exhausted, and, like, I made chicken fingers and fries, and so guess what, Cam? Like, I'm just like you, and this is a struggle for everybody, and, like, okay, maybe here's a tip or 2 of how to make it a little bit easier. But what you just did for me in that moment was go, "Okay, I'm actually not alone here. This is normal. We can laugh at it. I know somebody else who's in a similar boat." Like, those kinds of little connections go a long way and can be a really effective way as well for telling a story, simply because they're relatable. So you yourself, human out there who thinks, "Yeah, well, I'm just kind of boring and ordinary." It's like, great, because we all are. So that's how we can connect with each other.
So it's almost like the flip side, right? Like where we might feel that tension, like I need to be special and unique and magical, and the that like sense of connecting to other humans. It's actually the sameness and like the universality of the human experience. Whereas like, oh my goodness, I actually never realized that somebody else has eaten a half-eaten hot dog off the floor because that was the only option, with a newborn in your hands or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think often when we get into, okay, well, what are the kinds of things that we want to say? Like this is sort of a side tip. But if you know that there's something that you want to share, like a piece of information, like a health tip, a nutrition tip, how to improve your eating habits a little bit, or how to get more exercise in a busy day. Like if you have some sort of knowledge-based advice that you'd like to share, a great way to share that effectively is to think in your life, okay, when I experienced this myself, and just write a story about that type of situation. So, or a memory, like you said, the hot dog on the floor kind of thing, so that can be kind of a great gateway to tell a little relatable story that is then attached to a piece of advice or information that it exemplifies. A while back, I had Dr. John Berardi on my own podcast, and he and I talked about this a little bit. And he said, I like to think of it as, what is this like? So
Mhm.
you think about the advice you want to share, and then you think about what's another kind of similar situation where it comes up or that's similar to it, that we can relate to, and we can draw upon that.
I love that. So then if I'm thinking, yes, okay, I do want to do this. I know I want to do this. Now what? It feels like that's such a big, expansive,
Yeah.
overwhelming thing. Like, do you and when I see folks trying to figure this out and get this off the ground, on one hand, I get a sense that they might be getting stuck in the logistics of like the who and the what and the when and the what platform I use. But at the same time, I actually don't
Mhm.
know if that's necessarily the biggest thing that is holding them back. Like, what do you find?
Yeah, so I think I kind of, in a way to answer this, want to go back to the concern you brought up a second ago, um, about not wanting to add to the noise and so on. And I think there's a few things we need to think through here. And the first one is really like, do I have anything to say? And I think it's a valid question to ask, to say, all right, like what is the kind of stuff that I would want to share? And I think a lot of people get stuck right here because they don't necessarily know. It can feel, like you said, this big sort of void of this big expanse of unknown. But like, let's think about it a little bit. What are some of the things that you would want to say in a newsletter or similar regular communication? And I'm going to give you a few ideas. So, one of the things that we can talk about is what you would like to see. What are things that you would like to see in the world? What are changes that you would like to make? This is a kind of a ridiculous example, but the other day I was walking by a restaurant, like a chain kind of restaurant. So, and they had like this sign in the window that was like, "We believe that salad belongs on every plate." And it's kind of silly, but I thought, this is this is kind of what I'm talking about. Like, what do you believe? What would you want to see in the world, and why? And so you could take out a sheet of paper and just like brainstorm all of the kinds of positive changes that you would like to make in the world. And each of those is likely in itself a story. You believe that salad belongs on every plate? Like, why? Why does that matter? Where did you learn about salad in the first place? Why is it a good thing? How could we eat more of it? Why would it be different? Dig into those. And then in the reverse, you can also think like, what do you hate? What drives you crazy? My mentor, who I worked with right in the beginning of my communications career, taught me like, what drives you crazy makes you great. And it's like, so often the things that annoy us and that we could rant about are signals about what we actually really love and are naturally good at. So you could do also a long, like, brain dump of, what are the things that bug you or that you'd like to change, and dig into those. So those are kind of a couple of examples. Do you want me to pause for a sec?
I really like the example of a restaurant because I think it really gives a perfect example of how to bridge this seemingly hard gap between I want to teach and inform people, but at the same time, I don't want it to be boring, right? And I think part of the tension, like, well, if I'm a health coach and I write a newsletter, should I be talking about like salad is healthy for you? Okay, great. Like we're all bored already. But at the same time, you just gave me a prompt like, Kate, if you had your own restaurant, what would those signs in the windows say? Like, we believe that what? Right. And we can sort of consider, I'm thinking of a mutual friend that we have and said, no, we believe that every burger deserves a bun, right? Or we believe that cupcakes are stupid, right? I gotta know, like pick your own, because chances are like you'll have as many versions of that as you would have people. And I think that's really what's going to give that little personal touch and aspect of storytelling to something potentially very dry and informative and something that seemingly knows. But you could put those together and voila, you have a personalized newsletter.
Yeah, and that's true. And actually, but I kind of even want to kind of unpack it a little more. So what I'm trying to separate for people is this. First of all, when someone tells me like, oh, I don't want to just add to the noise, or I don't want to bother people, they're saying I don't really have anything interesting to say. First, I just want to say, do you actually not have anything that you would want to say? Because I'm guessing if you are a coach, there is stuff you care about. You have things that you want to say. So, because you wouldn't be in this business trying to help people if you didn't believe that there were things that we could do better or that are worth doing better. And you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you haven't accumulated any knowledge and, by the way, any personal experiences making you want to do this thing. So you probably do have something to say. All right. So now what? So then I think a couple questions arise. And one of those is the one you just pointed out, which is, but can I express them well enough? So like I have stuff I want to say, but now I'm worried it might sound boring. People might have heard it before. Um, like I don't know if I can express it well enough. But that's a different issue. Learning to write and to practice telling stories and communicating your ideas in a way that interests people and that maybe captivates them or entertains them or at least keeps them reading is different from having ideas. And so I kind of want to separate those two because both of these are sort of separate skills. Finding ideas about what to say and then learning to write about those things are kind of two different things. Learning to write, if you then that say, okay, I've got enough, I know I have things that I want to say. Are they worth saying? Well, yeah, I think they are because I think they can benefit people and they matter to me. Okay, that's good enough for me. Now we can move into, all right, how are you going to practice like writing and getting better at sharing those ideas? And there's just so much you can do with that. But it won't happen if you just don't do it. Right? Like if you say, I don't want to bug people and I don't know if I can do it well enough, so I just won't. Well, then we're not going to get anywhere.
Well, I think also if somebody got there, if somebody got to a point where they can actually say, well, and then I won't, that's almost not bad because at least there's a certain clarity and finality to it, right? And similar to the question you asked earlier, like, is there something you want to say? I've talked to folks who say, no, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to have a newsletter despite everybody telling me I should. And I don't want to add to the noise that's already out there. cool. Then there is no ambiguity, there is no ambivalence, there is no decision to be made. And it's really more folks that are really struggling with constantly having the thoughts that pop in their head. And they're like, ooh, like I would want to write about that, but can I? Should I? How can I go about it? And it's those ideas that hunt them down in the shower and attack them. So it's
Yes.
when I mention it, people laugh because that's exactly what that experience feels like. And even
Hmm.
if you land and it's like, nope, don't want to do it, I'm fine, thought about it, considered it, not interested. But
Hmm.
chances are, if you are continuously wondering, you have those ideas, you have something to say, and it's really just the how. So, what would be your like one? Here's your next step for the coach who's probably being attacked by ideas regularly.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to add to that because I do feel there are like infinite ways to communicate and connect with people. And I love newsletters. I think they're valuable. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Don't do it because you think you should. What concerns me is maybe people who aren't doing it simply because they write it off for themselves before giving it a chance and because it's scary. And like we can't get rid of that sort of scariness. If you're starting this, inevitably you also will be wondering, what if people don't like it? Or this fear of like, well, what if I'm bothering people? So let's just acknowledge that. When you write an email newsletter, I just want to say, first of all, you have to ask people to opt into it. So you cannot spam people. So you are not just randomly showing up in people's inboxes who didn't give you permission to be there. The laws vary, but at least where we are, that's the case. Um, there is also a delete button and there is also an unsubscribe button. And you have to have an unsubscribe option in your email. That's also law. So you are not actually, inundating people with something where they cannot get rid of you. They're choosing to be there. And if what you do doesn't serve them, they will leave. And that's a good thing. That means you may be speaking with a small group of people at first. Awesome. We want you to speak to your people. So, but that also means then we have to wrestle a little bit with our own maybe desires or like our need to feel like tons of people are going to listen and this is really going to make a big splash, and we have to wrestle with it being quiet and feeling like a void at times, like we're not, no one is responding to this, and I wish more people were opening it. And that's just something that is part of the deal. Like if you're on social media right now, you're grappling with that in your own way too. This is just a slightly different version of it. Um, so anyway, with all of that said, where do we start? I feel like I got lost from your question, Kate, on a slightly different tangent or rant.
All good. I think
Bring me back.
yeah, so I guess what I wanted to ask you is for folks that do know that they want to do this,
Mhm.
what do you think should be their next step?
I think you should write your first one. I think you should just do it. I can tell you how to map out a schedule. Like I have a spreadsheet. I decide how often I'm going to write. So I've been writing every 2 weeks for the past 6 or plus years, something to that effect, maybe more now. Um, Decide what you think might be a reasonable cadence for yourself. Is that every 2 weeks? Is it every week? Is it once a month? Is it once a quarter? Pick a time frame for you that feels maybe slightly, like a bit of a stretch goal, but like but doable and something you can commit to or think you can commit to. But I don't even want to overemphasize that point, because some folks are going to go, well, I don't know how long that is, and then what if I can't uphold it? And maybe they believe more in your method of like, well, I want to write enough to be not forgotten, that it's not. So really what we're talking about is just taking the plunge and getting started. I want you to write something, I want you to publish it, and then I want you to do it again.
I love that. Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome. I hope it's helpful. I have like so much more that I could add to this topic, but I guess I will just, just share that, like, I get that writing is hard and can feel intimidating, and publishing your writing and publishing your work in any way can feel scary. And email is more intimate. One of its benefits, rather than social media, is that it is more intimate. But so then that's also scary. But you can always try. And if it winds up not being for you and you don't like it, you run out of gas on it, you've tried it. But you don't, like anything else, it doesn't happen unless we just like walk into that space and put our hand up, do a thing, and give a shot.